In this video we're going to look at the water meter / electricity meter calculation and invoicing feature. This feature allows you to record water and or electricity meter readings and create invoices for usage against individual tenants. It allows you to nominate the recipient of the funds, being the owner, the supplier or the business when you create the invoice. You must have a copy of the council water rates notice and or the electricity provider notice for costing purposes. To access the water meter and or electricity meter reading areas, you need to go to the tenants. But before we do that, we do need to set up some information. And I'll show you in here under the setup drop-down list and into general configuration. In the defaults tab and tenant defaults, we have the ability to set up some information for tax invoices for the water charges and for electricity charges as necessary. It's a good idea to have a specific or default account code for these, so we do need to set up an account code particularly. We'll cancel out of here. Under the setup drop down list, we go to account codes. We select the add option here. We use water as our option there. You must determine whether GST applies to the water usage option in here. And again, either contacting the local water authority or having a look on the rates notice should give you an indication, of course. From here we need to determine whether this is an income or an expense, of course. We're looking at it from the owner's point of view. And then here we're looking at it as an income, of course. Save on there. We'll also add one in for electricity. Again, we determine whether GST is applicable or not. Again, have a look at the notice that you receive and obviously select the income expense account code option here as well. Save on there and you should find you've got electricity showing as an account code. And if we scroll down, there's one here for water as well. Close out of there, we go back to our setup option and general configuration. Under defaults and tenant defaults, we're now able to modify and insert our information in here. So scroll down to find our relevant account code, water for this one, and electricity for this particular one. For both of them as well, you can insert your default terms. We'll do 7 days. And again for our electricity. With these ones here, you want to be able to show the allowance or the excess on the invoice, i.e. show the meter reading information there. Same again for this one as well. And our default description for both of these ones here, we're going to show as water charge or electricity charge. Save your changes on there. And what we can now do in having set that up, go and have a look at creating a water meter reading for one of our tenants and producing an invoice for them. Under the tenants area here, I'm going to pick one of our tenants to do a meter reading against. Just drop into this particular tenant as an example. To access that information for the utilities, we go into tenancy info and under the utilities tab here, and we have our water tariff or meter calculator and alongside the tariff and meter calculator for electricity as well. Both of these will work in exactly the same way. Of course, when you're recording water meter information, you're looking at kilolitres, and when you're looking at electricity, you're looking at kilowatt hours. The processes to go through to record the information are the same for both of them, as is the creation of a tax invoice. So we'll have a look at the water meter one as an example. To record your information or record the value information, we select Modify Record. We need a start and end date for our meter reading, so you would be doing these as part of your inspections or part of your entry and exit condition reports, etc. We select, of course, the most appropriate date. I'm going to put this one here for February the 20th as our start date. And for this one here, we'll put that as the 20th of May. So again, just looking at a quarter period in regards to reading the information. We now need to put in the actual meter reading information here, and you're looking at this based on the litres amount. Okay, so most of you might read your water meters in the kilolitres. Make sure that the figures you enter in here are based on the litres amount. So as an example, I'm just going to put in the meter reading as it were. So this one here is 1,000 litres, as we can see there. Sorry, 1,000,000 litres, as it were, as a start reading option. And our next one here, I'm going to put in as an amount there. We insert the price per kilolitre, and this is where you will need the rates notice from the Water Authority. I'm just going to put in the figure I know for the current area here. We then determine at the next field here whether the tenants are allowed any litres per day, i.e. are they paying for only excess water or are they paying for all of the water usage. If they are allowed litres per day to use, then they're only going to be paying for excess water. If we put in 0 as the litres allowed, they're definitely then paying for all water usage on the property there. So once I've got that information inserted into the program, my next step here is to calculate the amount, and by clicking on the button there, you will see, based on the information that's recorded, it's giving me an amount or a price for the water usage and a breakdown on here. So based on the two readings we've got here, this tenant has used 15,000 litres of water over a period of 89 days, i.e. the date range here. They do not have any allowance, i.e. they're paying for all water usage, which means the total usage here in litres is 15,000, and it then gives me a breakdown of the amount of water used or litres used per day. At the moment there we're showing as 168 litres per the day. So again, using my price per kilolitre based on the amount of water that they've used, we then get a pricing here of the amount owing. Now this should be a very clear indication of the amount for that period, and what we want to do is now record those values and create a tax invoice from that. To record them there, once we're happy with the values that have been shown, we click on Record Values and we get a line option at the bottom here, which is exactly the same as the information we can see that has been produced there. What we now want to do is create an invoice from those ones there, and I can't click on that invoice option there until I highlight that line, and in doing so I now have the ability to create a tax invoice there. I select that option there. I'm now given the options here as to who will receive the payment once the tenant has made that there. You can pay the monies to the owner account, you can pay it to the business, or if we select the supplier account option here, we need to obviously of course select a supplier from our drop down list. I'm going to say that this money is just going to be paid directly to the owner once the tenant has drop the money into the trust account, of course. I OK on that option there, and I now have a tax invoice that's been created against this tenant specifically for the water usage. If we just have a look down here to have a look at what shows, we've obviously got the tenant's name, a date, an invoice number, the description of what they're being charged for, and the amount, and we can see here that we've given them a breakdown of the meter readings and dates and the amount of water that has been used. So that there can be printed and given to the tenant or exported to a PDF option in order to in order to email through to them. We'll close out of there now. Our next option to check with the invoice information is how to pay this here. I save my changes on there. One thing I will show you when we're looking still in this screen is I can reprint a tax invoice if I need to do so. So again, I would need to highlight that option there to click on the reprint tax invoice option. Having created that invoice, of course, we can now view under the account area here and under invoices an outstanding invoice specifically generated against this tenant. And in fact, any invoice that you generate for this tenant specifically will show under this account invoices tab showing here. I'm going to close out of there and here, so we'll just go through the steps of when the tenant does actually pay you for the water usage. We go up to the receipts button here, select the tenant of course. What we need to do of course is under the item drop down list select invoice, and it will give me an indication here of outstanding invoices that need payment. I highlight that one and select. It's going to assume that the tenant is paying that full amount of the invoice there. If they're not, we can overtype this with the amount they are paying towards it, or if they have paid the full amount, we select OK, and it shows as the full amount being paid on there. Save on that there. We now have our receipt, of course, showing for that invoice being paid. Select your most appropriate payment method, and save the rest of your receipt there. Back in the tenants area here, under the account tab, we can now see that that invoice has been paid off. And if we have a look back in the tenancy info and the utilities tab, we've still got a record, of course, of that particular invoice being generated and paid. And the next time we go through to read the water meter reading, all we need to do is modify and insert our new information in here in order to create a further invoice to send through to the tenant. So what we looked at in this video here is recording water meter reading information and also producing or recording those values and producing a tax invoice. The same process, of course, can be used for the electricity tariff meter calculator as well. And in this case here, we'd be looking at kilowatt hours as the usage against the tenant.